Welcome to The Rabbit Hole, Politics and Prose, a production of LibertyNation.com, hosted by Mark Angelides.
Is there an educational crisis? Well, the shape of that particular crisis depends on which country you live in. If you happen to be in the United States or the United Kingdom, the answer is a resounding yes. Despite blushing government officials touting better than ever results, all while casually ignoring that the tests have been dumbed down, the fact remains that large swaths of the next generation simply cannot read, write, or do math to any reasonable standard. Does this mean that the Asian model, which has seen China and Singapore dominate in math and science, is any better? Well, in some ways, yes, but not in the way you might think. School children are made to work extremely long hours under enormous pressure to memorize and regurgitate. Having lived and taught in China for many years, the number of children, young children with gray hairs, it would astound you. It's a factory process that in many ways grinds the kids down. In Western nations, we have a very different attitude whereby the students are not pressured to learn. Neither model produces young adults that are both educated and well balanced. So what are we missing? Surely there's some way to achieve a more happy medium. Well, in fact, there is. And perhaps not surprisingly, it's a method that's been around for thousands of years and is largely ignored today. I want to tell you a story, one that was passed on by the Roman statesman and philosopher Cicero. In around 500 BC, a Greek poet named Simonides was attending a party where he performed a victory ode for a Thessalian nobleman called Scopas. A fee had been initially agreed, but Scopas thought that the verse, which was supposed to be an ode to a boxer, had far too many references to Castor and Pollux. So the nobleman refused to pay the full amount. At that moment, Simonides was called outside, and a lightning bolt or a building collapse, depending on which source you follow, destroyed the home, the residence. The bodies of the dead couldn't be recognized or identified, but Simonides, using a powerful memory technique known as the loci method, managed to describe each person, their names, and their seating location. Now, this method also became known as the memory palace or the memory theater technique, and it allows students of it to retain vast swaths of information that can be easily recalled without the need for extensive revision. Throughout the Roman Empire, this memory feat was used by statesmen, nobles, and even children to remember facts or perform speeches without the need for notes and recall vast sums of data at whim. In fact, the use of memory palaces became hugely widespread, not just in Europe, but all over the world. Early Christian monks would use this method to aid in their contemplation of scripture. They'd memorize passages from the Bible and other texts and sit in quiet contemplation and meditation. St. Thomas Aquinas was a firm believer in the technique and advocated for it as a way to improve one's piety. The Dominican preaching order, the Jesuit missionaries, all created and kept up their own memory palaces, teaching its use and promoting its value. But the high opinion of this method was not to last. In the late 16th century, Puritans in England revolted against the practice, saying that it could excite obscene and ludicrous thoughts. Others argue that its true downfall was due to the Reformation and the Counter-Reformation, when both Protestants and Catholics sought to remove all pagan influence. What is clear is that this particular skill allows practitioners to consume troves of information in a short time that can be revisited and recalled at leisure. But what does it actually involve? Quite simply, the loci method involves visualizing familiar places, the home, a favorite museum, a school, and imagining walking a path through the place. Points of data can be attached to different rooms or different objects that you encounter in this mind walk. These are the loci. For example, if you want to memorize the names of all of Egypt's first dynasty pharaohs, you'd place them in order along your route with a vivid encounter, the more outlandish the better, and add details such as dates and historical events that took place during their rule. The key here is outlandish, the more vivid and extraordinary the scene you set, the more secure it becomes in your memory. It also works for numbers too. Gary Shang, a memory athlete, used this method to memorize pi to more than 65,000 places. That's quite a feat. However, it has more practical uses also. A number of folks use it to digest all the formulas and facts needed to pass the Chartered Financial Analyst, the CFA test. Or to remember more story-like data. Consider Homer. In the days before written material was common or widely available, how do you think playwrights would remember the 12,000 plus lines the Odyssey contains? It works, it's easy to do, and the results are outstanding. So why, to bring us back to our original point, do we insist on teaching today's students in methods that are demonstrably unreliable? The modern education system has often been accused of not teaching children how to think, but rather what to think. These youngsters are expected to regurgitate factoids with little care given for the contemplation of such things. They're asked to spew out the correct answers, and their futures are decided by how well they can repeat what they've been told. Their entire academic and work future can rely on these results, yet we expect them to remember things just by reading them again and again and again in the hopes that some of it just might stick. It is more than a disservice, it's a perverse hamstringing that puts enormous pressure on the minds of the delicate. What if kids could learn the entire periodic table in order in one afternoon? What if they could easily remember every mathematical formula and method they would need in just a day? Not only that, what if the process of memorizing these things were fun, enjoyable, and just bizarre enough for them to want to revisit the memory and spend some time actually thinking about what it is rather than just how to apply it in a test? The topics and curricula in schools and colleges is a hot politically partisan issue, and one that may not be solved in the very near future. But providing the tools to learn, providing the framework from which children can truly engage in their learning, should not be a subject that divides us along party lines. Better test scores, better mental health, better life outcomes. The answer is clear, and it's been around for at least 2,500 years. Perhaps as ever, we should look to the past to solve the problems of today. Thank you for listening to The Rabbit Hole. It's a production of libertynation.com.
Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.
The Rabbit Hole, Politics and Prose, a libertynation.com production.
Available at Libsyn, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, on Roku, and other fine podcast providers.